If you think about small talk, and I hope that by the end of this talk today, you'll never call it small again. If you think about small talk, even the name itself is an indication of how little appreciation this social ritual gets. Why is small talk called small? It's a waste of time. What else? I'm too busy, right? Who has time for this? Let's just get into it. Formalities. Yeah, who needs formalities, right? Why can't we just get down to business? What else? People think it's false. Oh, it's gossipy. Somebody here said it's too personal, right? You're all right. But I would submit to you that the primary reason people do not appreciate this social ritual is that they don't know two things about it. They don't know why it's important, and they don't know how to do it. What comes across intuitively as a complete arbitrary interaction actually has a tremendously powerful logic behind it, a logic that goes back many, many years. And there is a reason the social ritual evolved. It's a natural social evolutionary mechanism to help us deal with the remarkably challenging reality we live in today and how strong the contrast is between modern reality and historical reality. What I'm about to tell you stems partially from a remarkable book which I'm sure many of you have heard of, A Brief History of Mankind, of Humanity, by Yuval Noah Harari. When you read this book and you go 200, 300,000 years back in time, while sitting in a cafe somewhere on Wi-Fi, you kind of realize that we are very much still cave people, living in a modern age, and that the social evolution has run much, much faster than the psychological evolution, and certainly much faster than the biological evolution. That contrast is creating friction on a daily basis. And big talk is in fact a social ritual that evolved to alleviate that friction. If we go back in time and we look at social constructs, we find something very interesting. First of all, the number of people we interacted with from cradle to grave was extremely small compared to today. We're talking about 50 to 150 people in a lifelong community. And what we know, or what we think we know, about the nature of the interaction with these people is that it met 5 critical criteria that all generated one thing: an inherent trust between the individuals. Geography. When you interacted with people in the past, it meant that they were in physical proximity to you. It means that I could see you, nod your head, and contact it. There was a closing of the circle, confirming communication through feedback loops that I could see. I can't do that today, in most cases. Number 2, language. How many people in this room is English their native tongue? That's a minority in this room. Yes, we're all speaking English. Yes, English is the lingua franca of the modern world. But there never used to be, historically speaking, a situation where you spoke another language with somebody that wasn't your foreign language, because you only met 50 to 150 people. They lived in your village and you had that language. And the same goes for cross-cultural gaps. People didn't travel far enough to interact with people who were from different cultures. Number 4, relationships. Pretty much anybody you engaged with, you and they had other people in common that you called friends or family. Look at how social media today is being used by online commercial platforms. I see on eBay it says, your mom bought this. Right? They're trying to get to me by creating a common denominator through a trusted mutual source. That leads to trust. That is what bonding is. And finally, past experiences. To have a shared past experience with somebody is tremendously important for trust building and bonding. And to illustrate this to you, raise your hand if you've heard of the Stockholm Syndrome. The Stockholm Syndrome is a name that was given to a psychological situation that emerged out of a hijacking, a very brutal hijacking of a bank. Guess where that happened? I knew you were all intelligent the minute I walked in the room, really. What happened there was that people were taken hostage in the bank, and they could not be negotiated out into safety. And at some point, after many, many hours, special forces broke in and were amazed at what they saw. As they were rushing into the room, guns in hand, they saw some of the victims leaning over the bodies of their captors, yelling, "Don't shoot." And later, the defense was able to recruit some of the hostages to be character witnesses on behalf of their captors. And most amazingly, after the hostage takers were convicted, they discovered that some of the victims stayed in touch with them, wrote them letters, visited them in jail, but refused to talk about the incident with their families. How is it that I'm willing to bond with a complete stranger who threatened my life, but I can't share something with somebody in my house? And they call it the Stockholm Syndrome because it's so crazy, it's got to be a syndrome. But if you look at human evolution, social evolution, you find that our brains are wired to trust people with whom we have meaningful shared experiences or common denominators. So how sad is it that today, almost none of these criteria are built into the social dynamic? How many of our interactions today are in person versus how many are remote and virtual? How many of us get to speak in our native tongue most of the time? How many of us interact daily with people who come from cultures that are foreign to us? How many of us interact with people with whom we don't have shared connections? How many of us, because of all of these factors, interact with people with whom we have no previous prior experience? So I want you to think about the impact this has on society. The human body manufactures insulin naturally until it gets sick, and then it doesn't. And then you have diabetes. And when you have diabetes, you simply supplement with a shot. Right? You take an insulin shot, and now you have it. It wasn't being done on its own. It is now. We need to find a way to cure and supplement the lack of trust that used to be manufactured automatically by the human body as a society. It's not being generated anymore. In the past, thousands of years ago, if you ran into somebody that wasn't familiar to you, that was a stranger to you, what was the natural psychological response? A very famous condition in psychology. Two options: fight or flight. Fight or flight, meaning in both cases, this is a threat. So our brains are wired today, too, that when we can't check off these boxes, but we need to collaborate with somebody, our brains are saying, our system one, we'll talk about this tomorrow, is saying to us, threat. And there is a solution for this as well. It used to be fight or flight. Now there's a third F. What's the third F? Facebook. Right? You don't know them, you look them up. Who do we know? Oh, we have 50 friends in common. Okay. That goes back to the basic wiring of our brain. But because our body now has a form of diabetes, which of course means that it's not that we're not manufacturing insulin, we are not manufacturing trust. And that is causing tremendous friction in the workplace. It's hurting productivity, and more than anything, it's creating tension for us because we are constantly exposing our brain to stimulations that generate the fight or flight syndrome, and it's a stress generator. It's not healthy. It's a social evolution generated to compensate for the fact that we are now living in a reality where we need to interact with complete strangers. What were we told when we were kids? Don't talk to strangers. What are we told as adults? Collaborate. Why don't you collaborate? Collaborate. Share information. Why these silos in the organization? Because of this. Because of 250,000 years of social evolution. Compared to what? 100 years of modern industrial revolution? 100 years, not more than that, because it's only 100 years till it really got bad. Till we started operating remotely at this level of, it's not even that, maybe 50 years. So now that we understand what Big Talk is intended to do for us, let's take a look at the process. What's the mechanism that's happening in that black box when we interact well with somebody? First, we need to help our brain turn the stranger into the familiar. We want something unfamiliar to become familiar. That's it. It's enough that somebody goes up and down with you in the elevator, but you never talk. If you meet them on the other part of town in an elevator with other strangers that you've never met, the two of you are more likely to interact simply because you're not strangers to each other. After that, once the familiar is there, let's see if we can build on it and start creating common denominators, things we have in common. Part of the idea behind the sticker exercise is that it automatically creates a common denominator between the person who wrote the note and the person who chose that note. Already, we have something in common. Next, once we have common denominators, we have a foundation to build an ongoing relationship. And as the relationship goes through and gets more air mileage, that will create trust. Once we have trust, we have collaboration. All of this entire mechanism begins with good big talk. We understand this is not pointless. It goes to the very foundation, to the very fabric of human interaction. And we overlook it. We don't take it seriously. This can be one of the most meaningful parts of an early stage relationship building process for you with anybody. Not just with clients, not with the potential people to buy or reinvest in the bonds. People you interact with at work, people in your team, remote interfaces that you need to work with but never meet. That little part of big talk can make the difference between how fast they answer your email, how forgiving they are when you make a mistake, how forgiving you are when they make a mistake, how accommodating they'll be when you're in a rut and you need a quick response. All of these things begin with good big talk. This is actually a really interesting experiment by Fisher and Shapiro. Fisher is the same person who also wrote with Urey and Fisher, Getting to Yes. If anybody likes this field and wants a very easy read, like 70 pages PDF, get the book Getting to Yes. It was a groundbreaking piece of work out of Harvard in 1978, republished in 81, which basically said, you're thinking about negotiations all wrong. It's not win-lose, it's win-win if you do it well. And what Shapiro and Fisher did was a very interesting experiment. They took a group of strangers and said, we need you to come participate in some experiment. And when people arrived, they said, oh, I'm so sorry, the person running the experiment is just running a few minutes late. If you don't mind just waiting, we'll be right with you. Of course, all of this was engineered. And then, when the person arrived, and they did it multiple times, once the person arrived right away, once the person arrived 10 minutes later, once the person arrived 30 minutes later, then the groups were given a task that required collaboration and compromise. What they did in this simple but brilliant exercise was see if they could find a correlation between the amount of time people were stuck in the room together waiting and how quickly and successfully they achieved collaboration in the exercise. And you can imagine, it wouldn't be here if it wasn't. It was a direct correlation. The more people schmooze, the more they are willing to work together. Who has time? Who has time? We start the day early, we end it late, we never get through our emails, we never get to be on all the calls. We're constantly, like a Sisyphus challenge, constantly trying to pull the water out of the sinking boat, and then the water fills again. And the sinking boat is a metaphor to my inability to meet my tasks because there are just too many. So, who has time for this? But what you find with big talk is, the more you invest in it, the less time you end up spending trying to overcompensate for lack of collaboration. So big talk is about getting to know each other and building compatibility. It is a fundamental shift from a paradigm which is called a functional paradigm. What's written on your business cards? Your name and your title. What's your title? Oh, you're assistant executive director. Is that what you are? Is that who you are? It's a function that you fill. It's an important function, right? It's critical, and it's got meaning in the context of the organization that you're part of, and there's a lot of room to be proud of that. But it is a fraction of your identity, right? So we live in a world that looks at people as functions. It is really the extreme end of the Industrial Revolution. Productivity, productivity, productivity. By the way, I'm in favor of productivity. Big talk will give you greater productivity in a counterintuitive way that says, slow down for a minute. Take a few more minutes. Get stuck in the room with them for just a few more minutes, and then see what you can do. Asking, who are you? Tell me something about you. Let me understand. You're a parent. You're a sibling. You're a son. You're a friend. You're a musician. Right? You're an artist. You're a mountain climber. I mean, just look at the notes here. Look at the notes on the wall. Look at the richness and diversity of the people sitting in this room. It's amazing. Here is another psychological, not historical explanation to why this is so important. How many people here have heard of Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman? Daniel Kahneman is an Israeli, an incredible individual who dedicated his life along with his academic partner, Amos Tversky, who sadly passed away before he too could be awarded the Nobel Prize in Behavioral Economics. And what Kahneman discovered was that there are two operating systems in our brain. I'll go into this much deeper tomorrow. But what we can surmise from these discoveries is that at the end of the day, we feel before we think. And more importantly, we feel much longer after we forget. So just think about what that means. Look at how much time we invest in building PowerPoints and presentations and all that stuff, and then we come in and we rattle off 67 slides, and we're detailed, we're looking at all the facts. But at the end of the day, what you see on this graph is a comparison between the two systems that Kahneman and Tversky were speaking about. System one is an experiential system. It's how we feel. It's instinctive, it's quick, and it never fades. People can remember childhood memories, and if you use guided imagination and tell them to close their eyes and remember that first day of kindergarten or that first day when they got their high school diploma, we now know through advanced technologies that the body actually responds to the memory as if you're reliving it. Your heartbeat rises, you start sweating sometimes, you get excited, blood flushes to your face. That could be 40 years later. In fact, people who suffer trauma are people where that line actually goes up. They relive and it becomes more severe for them. That's experiential memory. That's the feeling. Then you have cognitive memory. That's what you're going to remember from what I say today. It's the facts, it's the figures, it's the data, it's the arguments. We know from experiments that people forget about 90% of what they hear within less than 30 minutes. And that's part of the overflow of information of the age we live in. The system one of the brain is binary. You meet me, you see me, you either like me or you don't. It's that basic. If I told you to take out your phones and just do a roulette on your contacts and land on a name, your gut will respond favorably or negatively to that name before you're done reading it. You're like, ugh, yeah, never mind. I'll call them later. Or, I have Monday morning with them. I love meeting with them on Monday, right? It's a positive or a negative. If you're successful in getting to the far right part of that scale, if you're all the way to the right and they really have a positive experience from you, you are effectively smack in the center of their comfort zone. How many people have heard that term, comfort zone? Okay. Can you describe it? What's a comfort zone?
It's like when you're with someone and no matter what they say or do, that you're at ease with it.
Okay. So it's a general, it's a set of circumstances in which I'm at ease, right? Meaning low risk, low tension, familiar environment, I like the weather, I'm surrounded by people that I trust, I'm asked to do things I'm good at, right? That would be my comfort zone. People gravitate to the center of their comfort zone no matter how senior they are. They could be the president, they could be a prime minister, they could be a CEO of a Fortune 500. Every time surveys are done, they find so many opportunities to see in the calendar. People are doing what's easier for them, more convenient, where they can be experts, and we procrastinate. And it's natural. There's no room for judgment here. It's a natural predisposition. I want to leverage that. If I can get myself into the center of the comfort zone of that person, when they gravitate to that center, I'll be there. When they feel uncertainty, I'm the one they'll call. When you read biographies, you see great leaders have these professional cabinets, but then they have their private cabinets. Who's there? Their childhood friends, their college roommates. They don't know anything about the subject matter, but they're trustworthy. They can be trusted to give the honest opinion. They can be trusted to tell you what you need and not what they're trying to get out of you. And so it's a nice balance between both. Okay, what happens when we don't prepare? What do we talk about when we don't prepare for small talk? What's like the most common topics for small talk? Big talk. Weather. Can you believe the weather? freezing. I just came from Tel Aviv, like 32 degrees. What else? What? Sports. Right. What else? Politics, sometimes. More so in Israel, I would say, than in other places. But yeah, you'll talk about something in current events, let's say, right? Why is that not meaningful? Why not? We're talking. We're turning the stranger into the familiar. We are building a common denominator through the elements of the circumstances that we're in. Why is that not that great? Because I'm not getting to know the person. Yep, that's true. And what else? What's missing? Personal, right? The personal is missing, and I would argue that one more thing is missing. I think getting to know each other, the personal, and the common denominators are not unique. They're not rare. Yeah. What? It's empty, right? It's technical. It doesn't really reveal anything, and it doesn't help us discover things that only we have in common. The more unique the common denominator, the stronger the bonding impact. So, what are we going to do with that? We're going to prepare. We're going to proactively make preparing for Big Talk part of the professional work that we do. Just like you prepare for a call, just like you prepare for a presentation, just like you prepare for an interview, you prepare for Big Talk. Do you know that leaders of states, heads of states, actually part of the pre-trip planning is what the Big Talk will be? Literally. The Oval Office will call the Prime Minister's office in Israel and be like, okay, so they're going to wear this tie, and they're going to meet at this place. Okay, and what are they going to schmooze about? Bibi just read an interesting book about AI and machine learning. Oh, great. Okay, we'll read up on that. We'll talk about that. They plan it. And that's good. That's fine. You should. Good social interactions should be planned. It's not to say they shouldn't be sincere. But most people think there's a contradiction between engineered behavior and sincerity. There isn't. How many people here feel that they are sincere people? Raise your hand. Keep your hand up if you think you're a manipulator. Keep it up. Keep your hand up, you manipulators. Did you wake up today and just throw something on? No. Did you put on makeup? Did you wear one of your nice shirts? Do you speak freely here as you do at home? Language, curse words, jokes that you will never tell at the workplace, but you feel free to tell at the bar. Why? This is all engineered behavior. So are we being insincere? No. We are being respectful to the circumstances. And I would argue that engineered behavior is absolutely legitimate and welcome as long as it's not false. As long as you're not showing a false part of who you are more than welcome to choose which part of me you want me to see. If it's true, if it's real. If you're going to pretend to be something you're not, you're going to get caught. And when you get caught, that positive is going to shoot to the negative. And once it does, you only need once or twice to move from the positive to the negative. You need 20 times that to go back to the positive. Now, you don't need to be fake, because as we saw from the notes here today, you're very interesting. I want you to all think about this for a minute and tell this to yourself, because most people think they're not, but you are. You're extremely interesting people. I have yet to meet a truly boring individual. When I meet somebody that doesn't seem interesting to me, all I know is that I haven't learned enough about them. Now, doesn't mean I need to go learn about them if I'm not going to work with them, if I don't plan on building a collaborative interaction with them, and I'm not naturally interested in them. We don't have to be friends. I don't have to learn more about them. But if I am going to work with these people, if we're going to be in a community, in a professional community, it's better for me to learn about them. A, it'll be functionally good, and B, I'll probably like them more. I worked with a manager who said to me, I have a problem. I have a team. We all go down to eat lunch 3 times a week, every single time, without fail. I have one guy on my team, an engineer, who sits in a separate table, never sits with us, never talks, just buries his face in that magazine of his, and I don't know what to do with him. What would you ask right now based on the description I gave you? Yes. What is he reading, right? What was the magazine? So immediately I said to this guy, what's the magazine? He said, I don't know, Wired something. Okay, I said to him, you are now going to find, you're going to read the next few editions. And you're going to flip through them until you find an interesting article that actually speaks to you. Then you're going to find an opportunity in the office at some point or another just to ask this guy a question about the article that you read. That's it. That's my recommendation to you. We left. We met a few weeks later. He's like, unbelievable. It's like magic. I said, what happened? He says, well, I read an interesting article, and it's something about machines and automation. And I asked him about it. He says, the guy lit up. Like his face became animated. He started talking to me. Was amazed that I read Wire. Now we talk all the time. All we needed to do was find an access point to the individual that he cared about that was a common denominator, and that's it. We're unlocked. I didn't suggest to him to read an article and pretend to be interested. I said, read enough articles until you find one that you are interested. There's no contradiction between engineered behavior and sincerity. It's very, very important. Because when you think that there is, this comes across as manipulative and insincere and generally negative when it shouldn't be. Engineered behavior helps people. Mediation is engineered behavior. Conflict resolution is engineered behavior, and they help the world as long as sincerity is kept. Okay, how are we going to do this? We're moving from the why to the how. A person has hats. That note you put on the wall, that's a hat. This pin I'm wearing, I'm an alumni of the IDC, that's a hat. The fact that I actually studied government studies there, that's another hat. Captain of the debate club, that's a hat. Younger brother of 3 sisters, hat. Loves dogs, hat. 2 dogs, hat. Okay? You look at people's hats. You start mapping who they are. What can we learn about these people? It starts with being curious, with caring about who's in front of you beyond the title on their business card. And then, the good news is that the overflow of information that makes life so difficult, in this case, actually plays in our favor. Because if you run a simple search on somebody today, you learn so many things. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, so much information, blogs, things that people were interviewed in. If you're thinking, well, this is a bit of this is stalking, you're right, it is. It's completely stalking. My argument is, if it's online, it's legitimate, and you should probably apply some judgment afterwards. If it's online, but for some reason you think maybe they don't want to talk about it, you need to apply some judgment. And it can get a little sticky when it's cross-cultural, because if I go to a friend's house in Israel, it's completely fine that my first question will be, well, how much are you paying rent here? Right? That's not common to ask and to talk about money in other cultures, is it? So you need to be aware. But it starts with collecting the information. Afterwards, you'll apply judgment. After you've collected the information, you're going to look and you're going to divide all the hats into personal hats and professional hats. Why is that important? So it's actually right between what you both said. You were on one end of the spectrum and you said not to become too personal, and you were on the other end to say don't get stuck with the professional. Find a middle ground. Find a middle ground, because you need that middle ground for it's called non-functional interaction. Let me explain what non-functional interaction is. I want you to all take out your phones, please. Business or personal? Excellent. Personal, actually. It's a good question. Take out your phones. I want you to find or think about a name of a friend, somebody not from work, who's like a good friend, but you haven't spoken to them in like 2 years. We all know that happens, right? Life happens. You run out of touch. It's fair. This is a simulation. Don't send it. But I would ask you to send the following to this friend of yours who you have not spoken to in 2 to 3 years. No happy birthdays, no Merry Christmas, nothing. Okay? You're writing them the following note. Hey man, it's been a while. I hope you're well. Listen, can I borrow the car this weekend? First of all, for those of you who want to know what System 1 is in the brain, that laugh was generated by System 1. It was so immediate. Your response was so instinctive. Your brain was like, no. Right? This is not happening. Every part of your social upbringing told you there's no way you're sending that text. I want you to tell me why. Why not? We know this, right? We grow up on this. This is a fundamental thing. But then when we go to work, those people also go to work. Non-functional interaction is a very recommended activity at workplace where you say, I'm going to find a way to interact with you not just when I need you, not just when you need me. Here's something really interesting to know, and this is called hat theory. Hat theory basically says, look, we each have personal and professional hats, but we also have two modes of using them. There are hats that are in the closet, just like clothes, right? This is not the only thing I have in my wardrobe. All the other clothes that I have are also part of my identity, but they're in the closet right now. And then you have the hats that I am wearing. For example, I am not standing here before you with my dog-loving hat on. I am not standing here before you as a vegan. Yeah, it's true, I'm a vegan, but that's not why I'm standing here. Why am I standing here? What hat is on my head right now? Professional, trainer, co-founder of Weimar. That's who I am to you right now. That's my professional hat. So there are hats that are in the closet, there are hats that are on their head. Here's what's interesting. If I had to organize all the hats, professional and personal, into two categories, which category would have more hats? Personal, right? Excellent. Many, many more personal hats than there are professional. But if I observed human behavior and asked time allocation-wise, what do I wear more, personal or professional? What's the answer? Absolutely professional. Now, some people say, that's not true, Ariel. You're still a dog lover. That's right, but I'm not wearing that, or I'm not playing with my dogs right now. I'm not looking at their pictures, though I have a picture in one of the presentations. Okay? So, why is that important? What's so important about this tragedy, if you ask me? We have many, many more personal hats than we have professional. We mostly wear more professional than we wear personal. If you look at the personal hats, they too can get divided into two categories. Internal, external. What's an internal hat? It's something that's connected to my identity without any physical reference or link to anything beyond myself. I love dogs. That exists within me. Versus I have dogs. Why is the difference so tremendous? Because guess what? When I get home at 10 p.m. and my now ex-wife used to say to me, it's your turn to walk the dogs. I don't love my dogs very much then. That's a personal hat that I have dogs. But it's an external hat in that I now have been delaying gratification all day long, working to fulfill a function for something that may be meaningful to me, but it's bigger than me, not me. Then I go home, finally, Champion Leagues is on. No, you got to walk the dogs. I know it's raining. And if it's not walking the dogs, it's taking care of the kids. And if it's not taking care of the kids, it's going to a family event, or a social event, or shopping, or cleaning, or paying the bills. We're not left with any time just to be us. It's sad. You know, you ask people what their favorite time of day is. This will sound a little crude, but it's true. What is people's favorite time of day? Who dares answer? Shower. There's something better than a shower. Restroom. You know why? The restroom is the one place where not only do people not expect you to answer the phone, they would appreciate it if you didn't answer the phone. That's your time to sit in a room and just, I don't know, play your games, Sudoku, read a paper, uninterrupted. It's like me time. When you do coaching, you ask people, what would you do if you had unlimited funds? And one of my favorite answers from somebody was, I would buy 2 islands. Like, okay, why 2 islands? I mean, I get that the first one you'd move with the family. The second says, no, hold it. I would move onto one of the islands. My family, they would live on the other island. It would be very close. The chopper would bring them over whenever they wanted. We live and we wait for some time off. Why do you think families fight on vacations? Because I'm finally, for me, finally I'm on vacation. Let's go eat here. No, I want to eat McDonald's. Right? So why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you all of this because Big Talk is an opportunity, is a golden opportunity to give somebody something that is rare in their life. You have an opportunity to let somebody else wear a personal, internal hat, even for just a few minutes. if you know something about them, if you know about a hobby that they have, if you know that they love soccer, or that they love a certain movie or stuff like that, and you say, oh, I see from the picture on the wall, I see that you love Picasso. Oh, watch their face. They transform. They absolutely transform. And for those few moments, as a result of your interaction with them, they get to spend a few moments wearing that internal hat that they thought they needed $1 billion for or to wait to retirement for. You don't have to wait. I'll give it to you for just a few minutes. And there you have it. The positive experience is there. All of that happens in Big Talk. Okay. Once you've identified their personal professional hats, what you're going to do is you're going to cross-reference their hats with your hats. You're going to find something you have in common. You're going to come ready to talk about it. You're not going to push it. You're going to wait. You're going to allow the opportunity to present itself, and when it does, you'll bring it up. If you're sophisticated, then you can say something like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I mean, it's my wife's turn to walk the dogs, but she couldn't do it. I'm so sorry. I'm just full of hair. You have dogs? Yeah, I love dogs. You have dogs? Of course. Shelter? Yeah, mine's a shelter too. I completely engineered that with the whole thing. Now, again, it's a delicate balance. Did I really walk the dogs? Did I not? I'm not a big fan of lying. I think it's unnecessary. It's not a moral thing. It's not for me to give you any kind of moral guidance. I just don't think it's necessary. I think people have so many hats that all you have to do is put in the extra effort and find that interesting hat. And if you don't find it the first time, find it the second time. But for that, you got to pay attention. You got to understand that you care about it more or equally to how much you want to give them the information or talk to them about the business meeting. Okay. Some rules of conduct. Be subtle. I think we explained that before. Don't rush the small talk. One of my first, most meaningful clients 15 years ago was a woman who I discovered was very much into astrology, and I was invited to be interviewed so that we would give talks all across Israel, and she was the person who was curating the speakers. And we sit down, and she says to me, so where are you from? I said, I grew up in Jerusalem, but I live in Tel Aviv. Oh, you know, I moved to Tel Aviv. She starts telling me her life story. 50 minutes. What star sign are you? Have you ever had a map done? I'm like, no, I'm not really into that, but I'm happy to hear about it, blah, 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 blah. And I'm beginning to notice my time's running out here. 10 minutes to the end of the meeting, out of nowhere, like a split personality, she looks at me and she says, okay, I'll give you guys a talk in Yerushalayim, Tel Aviv, and Eilat. If you get anything below an 85 customer satisfaction, I'm not bringing you again. Is that good for you? Absolutely. Thank you so much for the meeting. Like, okay, 6 weeks pass. We got a good score. I come back to talk to her about more plans. She's like, did I ever ask you if you made a star sign, a star map? I'm like, you did, but I haven't. She goes, so, again, 50 minutes, same story. And then at the end, 10 minutes, let it run. Let them decide when they're ready to move on. Okay? Let them decide, because they're basically telling you, I'm ready. And if you don't wait for them and you rush it, you're gambling. You're gambling. Does that mean that maybe once in a blue moon, somebody who's completely unaware of time will completely waste the entire meeting? Yes, it could happen. I'd rather that be a missed opportunity than all the other missed opportunities when you didn't actually invest in Big Talk. Number 3, we talked about this. Be curious. Care. Try to find out who the person is truly. And finally, wait for their signal. Some don'ts. Don't lie. Don't embellish. Don't pretend. You don't need to. It's not a moral thing. And there's a practical aspect to this, which is you lose your credibility, you're done. The second most important skill or characteristics managers say they need in the workplace today is communication skills. You know what the first one is? Integrity. Integrity is the number one. And you know, it makes a lot of sense. It comes full circle with the fact that this entire talk was about trust. How can I trust you if you don't have integrity? So don't get tempted to instant gratify yourself and just get something done. It's a small world. I know it's a big world, but it's actually a small world. And people are connecting all the time, and all the information is being stored. Don't lie. You don't need to. Just put in the extra effort and figure out who the person is in front of you.